And David Schenker joins me now from Washington. He's the director of the program of Arab politics at the Washington Institute. So, David, for our viewers, can you explain why losing Raqqa cripples ISIS in their operations?
Well, listen, there's a couple things that distinguished ISIS from its competitors, from al-Qaeda, for example. One of those was the brutality of the organization, the orange jumpsuits and the chopping of heads. The second was that ISIS actually controlled territory. Ever since the war in Afghanistan, al-Qaeda has not controlled any territory, and it made it much more difficult for them to conduct operations, to do the planning and to the training. ISIS had this, but now that they've been basically expelled from Mosul and now Raqqa, it is a huge blow to the prestige of the group, and I think undercuts it dramatically in terms of its popular appeal.
So the group lost Mosul, they lost Raqqa. What other strongholds are left for ISIS, if any?
Well, they have several what we call provinces. These are places like Wilayat Sina, the Sinai, in Mali, elsewhere throughout the region. This was the mothership. And so it's a huge sort of ideological blow to the group. But then you have people who obviously have streamed out. These people have not all been killed. They are going to go to the provinces or to the neighboring countries, or all these foreign fighters who had gone in from Europe may decide it's time to return home, and then we may see, in fact, terrorist operations back in Europe or in other neighboring countries like Jordan or Lebanon.
Why is it that ISIS chose Raqqa to be their stronghold in the beginning?
Well, it was far removed from the Assad regime, what we call useful Syria. This is the spine of Syria that goes north-south from Damascus to Homs to Hama to Halab to Aleppo. This is the area where most Syrians live. Raqqa was isolated, and in fact, the Assad regime benefited greatly from having ISIS out there. It raised the specter of ambivalence of the international community. At one point, the entire international community was unified that Assad had to go, and then Assad essentially freed all the prisoners from jail, all the Islamists from jail, and helped establish ISIS on his territory, and he never attacked ISIS in Raqqa until very recently. There was an ambivalence because people said, well, the devil we know is Assad, or we can have ISIS. And all of a sudden, people became, I think, more accepting of the idea of Assad staying.
Do you think it's possible that we'll see a resurgence of these ISIS militant strongholds, these recaptured cities again?
Well, I don't know about Raqqa in particular. I would imagine that we are going to see ISIS or the remnants of ISIS take part in some sort of insurgency within Syria. I am fairly confident that if we don't take on Iran and all these Shiite militias like the Hashd-e-Shaabi that the Iranians back from Iraq, or Hezbollah, the Iranian proxy of the Lebanese proxy of Iran, these groups, the Iranians operating in this territory, basically fuel more support for Sunni fundamentalism. ISIS is, they hate Shiites more than they hate, for example, Jews. I think that we can expect to see, and I would be surprised if we didn't see either Son of ISIS or ISIS 2.0 in the future.
You mentioned ISIS 2.0. I was so surprised when the Las Vegas shooting happened that instantly ISIS had claimed responsibility, that the shooter was somehow behind that. Hezbollah doesn't tend to do that. Other militant organizations like al-Qaeda doesn't tend to do that. Were you surprised that ISIS had claimed responsibility for something that law enforcement says had no connection to ISIS?
No, I'm not surprised. Until now, actually, ISIS has been pretty disciplined about its claims of responsibility. But I think that since the operational tempo has increased, since they lost Mosul and were basically on their back heels in Raqqa, they feel like they have to demonstrate their relevance. And so whether that's taking claim for Las Vegas or in fact, feeling the need to perpetrate more terrorist attacks in places like Europe or the West to reassert their relevance at this time when they are being dealt such a blow. I think we can expect more of this in the future.
What do you worry? You talk about ISIS 2.0. What's your worry next, looking into the future?
So I think that returning foreign fighters from this territory in Syria, from Iraq, back into Europe, I think that's going to be a problem. I think that countries like Jordan, which had a number of terrorist attacks in 2016, but haven't yet, surprisingly, seen any in 2017, I think that's going to be an issue. Lebanon as well. And of course, primarily Europe, which has, a domestic population that is enormous. A lot of the pre-operational planning for the operations in places like Belgium had been done in Raqqa, but I think this phenomenon of lone wolf, of people that self or auto-affiliate with these groups, is going to be a significant problem going forward. This is a big blow to ISIS, but they're not done.
David Schenker, thank you so much for joining us, David, and for your insight.
It's my pleasure.